Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Foundations. Adrian Mercer built things with his hands. It was what he had always done, from the time he was a boy fixing bicycles in his father's garage to becoming one of the most sought-after custom home builders in Lakewood. His reputation for uncompromising quality and attention to detail had earned him not just financial success, but respect, something he valued far more than money. Today marked 15 years since he'd founded Mercer Custom Homes. The celebration of the lakeside property they'd just finished was in full swing, his crew and their families enjoying the summer evening. Adrian stood back, nursing a beer, watching his wife Vanessa charm a group of potential clients. "You could at least pretend to mingle," came a voice beside him. His brother-in-law, Scott, handed him a fresh beer. "They seem to be doing fine without me," Adrian said, nodding toward Vanessa. At 42, she still turned heads, tall and graceful with auburn hair that caught the sunset light. "Besides, I built the houses." She sells the dream. "Match made in heaven," Scott said with a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Adrian caught it, but said nothing. Scott had never fully approved of Vanessa, though he kept his opinions mostly to himself these days. "Dad," Adrian's daughter Mia bounded up, her 16-year-old energy seeming inexhaustible. "Mom says we're cutting the cake in 10 minutes. She wanted me to make sure you're ready for your speech." "Speech?" Adrian frowned. Nobody said anything about a speech. Mia rolled her eyes with teenage exasperation. "It's your company anniversary. Of course you have to say something." Before Adrian could protest, his phone buzzed. A text from Dean Lowry, his project manager. "Need to talk. It's important. Meet me in the boathouse." "Everything okay?" Mia asked, noticing his expression change. "Yeah, just business. Tell your mom I'll be there in 5. Adrian ruffled his daughter's hair like he'd done since she was small, though she was nearly as tall as him now. The boathouse was dark when Adrian entered, the evening light barely filtering through the small windows. "Dean," he called out, reaching for the light switch. The lights flickered on to reveal not Dean, but Theo Reynolds, his newest client and owner of Reynolds Development Group. The man was leaning against Adrian's own boat, looking strangely comfortable for someone who shouldn't have been there. "Adrian," Theo nodded. "Sorry for the cloak and dagger. I borrowed Dean's phone." Adrian's posture stiffened. "What's this about, Theo? I've got guests waiting." "I'll be brief. I'm offering to buy you out. $20 million. Your brand stays intact. You get a 5-year contract as lead builder, but Reynolds Development takes ownership." Adrian stared, incredulous. "My company's not for sale." Theo pushed off from the boat and approached, his expensive shoes clicking on the wooden dock. "Vanessa seems to think otherwise. We've been discussing terms for months." The world tilted slightly beneath Adrian's feet. "Vanessa has no authority to sell my company." "Doesn't she?" Theo raised an eyebrow. "As your CFO and co-owner, I believe she does." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward Adrian. "These are the preliminary papers she's already reviewed. I just need your signature to make it official." Adrian struggled to process what he was seeing. "Get out," he finally managed. "We'll discuss this another time." "Fair enough." Theo slipped his phone back into his pocket. "But the offer expires at the end of the month. Vanessa is quite eager to move forward." He paused at the door. "Oh, and congratulations on 15 years. Quite an achievement." Adrian stood alone in the boathouse, the distant sounds of the party continuing without him. His company, his life's work, and Vanessa had been negotiating its sale behind his back. When he finally returned to the party, he found Vanessa looking for him, irritation clear on her face. "Where have you been? Everyone's waiting." She smoothed his collar unnecessarily, a habit that had once seemed endearing. "Why didn't you tell me Theo Reynolds wants to buy the company?" Adrian kept his voice low, controlled. Vanessa's hand froze. "He approached you? Tonight?" "Yes, tonight. At our company anniversary party. With paperwork you've apparently already reviewed." She recovered quickly, her social smile returning. We can discuss this later. Right now, we have guests. No, Adrian said firmly. We discuss this now. How long have you been talking to Reynolds without telling me? Adrian, she hissed, not here. Something caught his eye over her shoulder. Theo Reynolds had returned to the party and was watching them with undisguised interest. When their eyes met, Theo raised his glass in a small toast. Fine, Adrian conceded. Later. But this conversation isn't over. He followed Vanessa to the center of the gathering where a large cake decorated with the Mercer Custom Homes logo awaited. As cameras raised and people cheered, Adrian forced a smile and gave the speech he hadn't prepared, all while a cold realization settled in his chest. The foundation of his life might not be as solid as he had believed. Chapter 2. Cracks. The drive home from the anniversary party was silent. Mia sat in the back seat, headphones on, oblivious to the tension between her parents. Adrian's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Vanessa stared out the passenger window, her profile illuminated by passing streetlights. Once home, Mia disappeared upstairs with a quick goodnight, leaving them alone in the kitchen of the house Adrian had built 5 years ago, his masterpiece, with its open floor plan and walls of windows overlooking the lake. Explain, Adrian said simply, leaning against the island countertop. Vanessa poured herself a glass of water. Reynolds approached me 3 months ago. I was going to tell you once I had a better sense of the offer. 3 months? Adrian's voice was dangerously quiet. And you didn't think your husband and business partner deserved to know? I was protecting you, she countered. You're so emotionally attached to the company that you can't see the bigger picture. Which is what, exactly? We're getting older, Adrian. Do you really want to be climbing around construction sites when you're 60? This is our chance to secure our future, Mia's future. Reynolds is offering enough that we'd never have to work again. Adrian studied his wife, wondering when she had become a stranger. I built this company from nothing. It's not just about money. No, it's about your ego, Vanessa snapped. You're so obsessed with being Adrian Mercer, the builder, that you can't see what's best for this family. Don't pretend this is about family, Adrian said, the hurt hardening into anger. You went behind my back. For months. That's not protection. That's betrayal. Vanessa's expression softened, and she approached him, placing a hand on his arm. I'm sorry for how you found out. But Adrian, please just consider the offer. For us. He looked at her hand on his arm, then into her eyes, searching for the woman he'd married. I need some air, he said finally, pulling away. Adrian spent the night in his workshop, the smell of sawdust and varnish more comforting than his own bed. By morning, he'd made a decision. I want to see all the company financials, he told Vanessa over breakfast. Every account, every transaction for the past year. Vanessa looked up from her coffee, surprise crossing her face. Why? Because if we're discussing selling my company, I need to know exactly what state it's in. Our company, she corrected. And you get monthly reports. Nothing's changed. Humor me, Adrian said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Mia entered the kitchen, immediately sensing the atmosphere. Everything okay? Fine, honey, Vanessa answered too quickly. Dad and I are just discussing business. On a Saturday? Mia raised an eyebrow, pouring herself juice. Business doesn't know weekends, Adrian said, forcing a lighter tone. Hey, I thought we could work on your car today. That timing belt isn't going to replace itself. Mia brightened. Really? I thought you'd be busy with work stuff after last night. Never too busy for you, kiddo. He tousled her hair, earning a theatrical groan that made him smile genuinely for the first time since his conversation with Theo Reynolds. Later, as they worked side by side under the hood of Mia's second-hand Honda, Adrian found himself studying his daughter. She had his dark hair and stubborn chin, but Vanessa's eyes and graceful hands. Lately, she'd been more distant, spending time with a new group of friends he and Vanessa hadn't met yet. So, he said casually, handing her a wrench, how's school? That project for Mr. Landry going okay? Mia tensed slightly. It's fine. We're working on it. We? Your partner. What was his name again? Tyler, she answered, focusing intently on the bolt she was turning. And yeah, we're making progress. Adrian nodded, noting her evasiveness but not pushing. You know you could talk to me about anything, right? No matter what. Mia paused, looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Yeah, Dad. I know. The moment was interrupted by the sound of gravel crunching under tires. A sleek black SUV pulled into their driveway, and Theo Reynolds stepped out, dressed casually but expensively in designer jeans and a blazer. What's he doing here? Mia asked. Adrian wiped his hands on a shop rag. Good question. Vanessa emerged from the house, looking too put together for a Saturday at home. She greeted Theo with a warm smile and a brief hug that lasted a beat too long. Something cold settled in Adrian's stomach. I'll finish up here, Mia said quietly, noticing her father's expression. Adrian nodded and approached the pair. Theo, this is unexpected. Adrian, sorry to drop by unannounced. Vanessa mentioned you had questions about the offer, and I was in the neighborhood. Adrian looked at his wife, whose smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Did she? Well, come in then. Let's talk. In his home office, Adrian listened as Theo outlined his vision for Mercer Custom Homes under the Reynolds Development umbrella. It was all very reasonable, very lucrative, and entirely wrong for everything Adrian had built his company to be. Your craftsmanship combined with our resources, Theo was saying. We could double your output in the first year. At what cost to quality? Adrian asked. Theo leaned forward. I understand your concerns. But times change, Adrian. Clients want homes faster, with all the modern amenities. They care more about smart home features than hand-carved banisters. Some clients, maybe, Adrian conceded, but not mine. They could be, Vanessa interjected. That's what Theo's been showing me. There's a whole market we're not reaching. The way she said while sitting beside, Theo raised the hairs on Adrian's neck. He studied them both, noticing for the first time the subtle body language, how they angled toward each other, the ease between them that spoke of more than professional meetings. I'll need time to consider everything, Adrian said finally, and I want my lawyer to review any paperwork. Of course, Theo stood, extending his hand. Take the weekend. We can meet at my office Monday morning. After Theo left, Adrian confronted Vanessa in the kitchen. How long? She was washing a coffee mug, her back to him. How long what? Don't. His voice was soft but firm. How long have you been sleeping with him? The mug slipped from her hands, shattering in the sink. Vanessa turned slowly, her face a mask of shock that didn't reach her eyes. That's absurd. Is it? The secret meetings, the way you look at each other. Do you think I'm blind? You're being paranoid, she said, but her voice wavered. Theo is a business associate. Nothing more. Adrian studied the woman he'd spent 20 years with. You know what's strange? I built this house to be our forever home. I know every nail, every board. But standing here now, I've never felt more like a stranger in my own life. He turned to leave, but Vanessa's voice stopped him. Adrian, wait. It's not what you think. He looked back at her, waiting. We're just friends. He understands the pressure I'm under, the sacrifices I've made for this family, this business. Sacrifices? Adrian repeated incredulously. What sacrifices, Vanessa? The vacations? The car? The country club membership? Tell me which part of our life together has been such a burden. Before she could answer, they heard the front door open and Mia's footsteps in the hallway. Vanessa quickly composed herself, wiping away a tear Adrian wasn't convinced was genuine. We'll discuss this later, she said quietly. Yes, Adrian agreed. We will. That night, while Vanessa slept, or pretended to, Adrian slipped into the home office and logged into the company's financial system. As CFO, Vanessa managed all the accounts, but Adrian still had administrator access. He began systematically reviewing transactions from the past year, looking for anything unusual. 3 hours later, he found it, a series of consulting payments to a company called Westlake Strategies. Small enough to not raise red flags individually, but totaling over $200,000 when added together. A company he'd never heard of, never approved contracts for. A quick search revealed that Westlake Strategies had been incorporated 18 months ago. The listed address was a virtual office. The registered agent was a lawyer Adrian didn't recognize. But the incorporation documents were public record, and they listed one principal, Theodore Reynolds. Adrian leaned back in his chair, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. Vanessa hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been funneling company money to her lover, weakening the business to make it more susceptible to take over. The betrayal was complete, personal and professional. His marriage, his company, his life, all undermined by the person he had trusted most. By morning, Adrian Mercer was a changed man. The builder, the husband, the father who believed in second chances was gone. In his place stood someone new, someone who understood that sometimes the only way forward was to tear everything down and start again. Only this time, he wouldn't be building. He would be destroying. Chapter 3. Shattered. The Sunday morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows, catching dust motes in its golden light. Adrian sat at the island, a cup of coffee cooling before him, financial documents spread across the granite surface. He'd barely slept, spending most of the night piecing together the extent of Vanessa's deception. "You're up early," Vanessa said, entering the kitchen in her silk robe. She moved to the coffee maker, her back to him. "Couldn't sleep. I was working," Adrian replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "Looking over some interesting financial records." Vanessa tensed almost imperceptibly before reaching for a mug. "On a Sunday? What couldn't wait?" "Westlake Strategies," Adrian said simply. "Ring any bells?" The mug froze halfway to the coffee pot. Vanessa set it down carefully and turned to face him. "You've been going through company records without telling me? Ironic that you're concerned about people doing things behind your back," Adrian observed coldly. "What is Westlake Strategies, Vanessa? Besides a shell company for your lover. It's not what you think." "Stop saying that." Adrian's voice rose slightly. $200,000 of company money to a fake consulting firm owned by Theo Reynolds. While you've been telling me we need to cut costs. While you've been positioning us for his takeover offer. Vanessa's composure cracked. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The company is stagnating because you refuse to evolve. Theo has vision. Theo has his hands in my pocket and his dick in my wife," Adrian interrupted brutally. "Don't dress this up as some noble business strategy." Vanessa flinched. "Keep your voice down. Mia could hear you." "I'm sure Mia would be fascinated to learn what her mother's been up to," Adrian replied, gathering the papers into a folder. "But don't worry, I'm not having this conversation here. I've called Liam. He's meeting us at the office in an hour." "Liam? Why is our lawyer involved?" "Because what you've done isn't just adultery, Vanessa. It's embezzlement. Fraud." Adrian stood, tucking the folder under his arm. "Get dressed. I'll wait in the car." "Adrian, please," Vanessa's voice cracked. "We need to talk about this rationally." "We're past that," he said, already walking away. "Way past that." At the office, Liam Porter looked grave as Adrian laid out what he discovered. The three of them sat in the conference room. Adrian and Liam on one side of the table, Vanessa alone on the other, her usual confidence replaced by a tightly controlled panic. "These are serious allegations," Liam said, reviewing the documents. "If what Adrian's showing me is accurate, Vanessa, you could be facing criminal charges." "This is ridiculous," Vanessa protested. "I'm a CFO. I made business decisions. You made fraudulent payments to a company owned by someone with whom you're having an extramarital affair," Liam interrupted, "while simultaneously negotiating to sell the company without the knowledge or consent of your co-owner and husband. There's no scenario where this looks legitimate." Vanessa's eyes welled with tears. "Adrian, please. We can fix this. For Mia's sake, if nothing else." Adrian, who had been silent, finally spoke. "You should have thought about Mia before you started dismantling her future. What do you want?" Vanessa asked, defeated. "Divorce," Adrian said flatly. "You sign over your shares in the company. You take no alimony. In exchange, I don't press charges for the embezzlement." "You can't be serious," Vanessa gasped. 20 years of marriage, and you want to throw it all away?" "I didn't throw it away," Adrian countered. "You did. Every time you met with Reynolds. Every time you diverted company funds. Every time you lied to my face about all of it. And what about Mia? Have you thought about what this will do to her?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "Don't use our daughter as a shield. This is between you and me." "Mia stays with me," Vanessa declared. "She needs her mother." "We'll let her decide," Adrian responded. "She's 16, not 6. Liam cleared his throat. I suggest we all take a day to cool down. I'll draw up preliminary separation papers, and we can reconvene tomorrow. Fine, Vanessa stood, gathering her purse. But this isn't over, Adrian. Not by a long shot. After she left, Liam turned to his client with concern. Are you sure about this, Adrian? Once we start down this road. I'm sure, Adrian confirmed grimly. She betrayed everything we built together. There's no coming back from that. When Adrian returned home, the house was quiet. A note on the counter informed him that Vanessa had taken Mia shopping and they'd be back for dinner. He was secretly relieved. He needed time to prepare for the conversation with his daughter. In his workshop, Adrian lost himself in the familiar rhythm of woodworking. The piece he was creating, a jewelry box of walnut and maple, had been intended as an anniversary gift for Vanessa. Now, as his hands worked the wood, he realized he was finishing it out of some perverse need for closure. The sound of a car in the driveway pulled him from his trance. Voices, Vanessa's and Mia's, but also a male voice he recognized with a surge of rage. Theo Reynolds. In his home. Again, Adrian set down his tools and made his way to the house. In the kitchen, he found the three of them unloading shopping bags, laughing like old friends. What's going on here? Adrian asked from the doorway. Mia looked up, her smile fading at his expression. Hey, Dad. Mom ran into Mr. Reynolds at the mall, and he offered to help with the bags. Did he? Adrian's gaze locked with Theo's. Interesting coincidence. Adrian, Vanessa interjected smoothly. Theo was just leaving. Actually, Theo said, I was hoping to talk to both of you about tomorrow's meeting. Clear the air a bit. There is no meeting tomorrow, Adrian replied. And you need to leave. Now. Mia looked between the adults, confusion evident. What's going on? Nothing for you to worry about, honey, Vanessa said quickly. Just business. Business, Adrian repeated with a hollow laugh. Is that what we're calling it? Theo cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps this isn't the best time. I'll call you later, Vanessa. Don't call her at all. Adrian stepped forward. Don't contact my wife, don't come to my home, and stay the hell away from my daughter. Dad, Mia exclaimed, shocked by his uncharacteristic aggression. Theo raised his hands in a placating gesture. I understand you're upset, Adrian, finding out about the offer the way you did. The offer? Adrian laughed bitterly. You think this is about your pathetic attempt to buy my company? This is about you sleeping with my wife while conspiring to steal what I've built. The kitchen fell silent. Mia's eyes widened as she looked to her mother for denial. When none came, her face crumpled. Mom, she whispered. Is that true? Vanessa reached for her daughter. Mia, it's complicated. Is it true? Mia repeated, pulling away from her mother's touch. Yes, Adrian answered for her. It's true, along with embezzling company funds to finance whatever this is. He gestured between Vanessa and Theo. You bastard, Vanessa hissed at Adrian. You had no right to bring this up in front of Mia. You brought it into our home, Adrian countered. You made it her business when you invited your lover here. Mia backed away from all of them, tears streaming down her face. I can't believe this. I can't. She turned and fled upstairs, her bedroom door slamming moments later. I should go, Theo said awkwardly. You think? Adrian stepped aside, gesturing mockingly toward the door. By all means. After Theo left, Vanessa rounded on Adrian. How dare you? Humiliating me in front of our daughter. Save it. Adrian cut her off. I'm done with your manipulations. Pack a bag. You're not staying here tonight. You can't kick me out of my own home. My home, Adrian corrected coldly. Built with my hands, paid for with my company's money. Money you've been stealing. So yes, I am. Go to a hotel. Go to your mother's. Go to your lover. I don't care where you go, just go. Vanessa stared at him, searching his face for any sign of the man she'd married. Finding none, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Fine, but this isn't over. You're right about that, Adrian agreed. It's just beginning. After Vanessa left to pack, Adrian went upstairs and knocked gently on Mia's door. Mia? It's Dad. Can we talk? No answer came, but he could hear muffled sobbing from within. I know this is a lot to take in, he continued through the door. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. Still no response. Adrian sighed and returned downstairs, settling into his armchair with a glass of whiskey. The house that had once been his pride and joy now felt like a mausoleum for his failed marriage. Everything he'd built, his family, his company, his life, was crumbling around him. But as he sat in the gathering darkness, something hardened within Adrian Mercer. The pain of betrayal crystallized into resolve. Vanessa and Theo had conspired to take everything from him, believing him too blind or too weak to fight back. They had gravely miscalculated. Adrian wasn't just a builder. He was a planner, a problem solver, a man who understood that proper foundation work was essential for anything meant to last. And now, he would use those same skills to plan his revenge, meticulously, patiently, irrevocably. They wanted to destroy what he'd built. He would make sure they regretted it for the rest of their lives. Chapter 4: Cold Fire. The next morning, Adrian found Mia's bedroom empty, her bed untouched. A note on her pillow simply read, "Staying at Zoe's. Need time to think." Zoe Palmer had been Mia's best friend since elementary school. Her parents were good people. Paul Palmer had been Adrian's first client when he started his company. They'd look after Mia, give her the space she needed. Still, Adrian texted her, "I understand. Let me know if you need anything. Love you." No response came, but he hadn't expected one. The wounds were too fresh. At the office, Adrian called an emergency meeting with his core team, excluding Vanessa, of course. Dean Lowry, his project manager, Monica Reeves, his lead architect, and Curtis Webb, his site foreman. People he'd worked with for years, people he trusted, or thought he did. "I'll get straight to the point," Adrian began once they were all seated in the conference room. "Vanessa and I are separating. She will no longer be involved with Mercer Custom Homes." Shocked silence greeted this announcement. Monica was the first to recover. "Adrian, I'm so sorry. Is there anything we can do?" "Yes," Adrian nodded. "I need complete transparency. Vanessa has been embezzling funds through a shell company called Westlake Strategies, owned by Theo Reynolds." "Reynolds?" Dean frowned. "The developer who's been sniffing around our contracts." "The same," Adrian confirmed. "He's also been sniffing around my wife." The bitterness in his voice was palpable. "I need to know if any of you were aware of these payments or any other financial irregularities." Curtis shifted uncomfortably. "I did question some budget cuts on my sites when material costs were supposedly going up. Vanessa said it was temporary cash flow issues. And I was told to scale back on some custom features," Monica added. "Again, supposedly for budget reasons." Adrian nodded grimly. "They've been systematically weakening the company, making it more vulnerable to take over. Reynolds offered $20 million, well below market value, knowing we'd be in no position to refuse." "That son of a bitch," Dean muttered. "What's the plan, boss?" Adrian leaned forward. "First, damage control. Liam's freezing the company accounts Vanessa had access to and setting up new ones. Curtis, I need you to reassure our crews that their jobs are safe. Monica, contact our current clients. Let them know there's been a management restructuring, but their projects are proceeding as planned. Dean, review all contracts and projects for the last 18 months. Look for anything unusual, delays, substitutions, cost overruns." As his team dispersed, Adrian remained in the conference room, staring at the wall of photos documenting their major projects over the years. Vanessa was in many of them, always by his side at ribbon cuttings and project launches. The perfect business partner, the perfect wife, all an elaborate fiction. His phone buzzed with a text from Liam. Vanessa's lawyer called. "They want a meeting. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office." Adrian replied simply, "I'll be there." That evening, he returned to an empty house. No Vanessa, no Mia, just the hollow echo of his footsteps on the hardwood floors he'd installed himself. He should eat something, he knew, but the thought of food turned his stomach. Instead, he poured himself a drink and stepped out onto the deck overlooking the lake. The silence was broken by the sound of tires on gravel. Adrian tensed, expecting Vanessa, but the car that pulled up was Paul Palmer's old Volvo. A moment later, Mia emerged, her shoulders hunched as she made her way to the front door. Adrian met her in the entryway. She looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Hey," he said softly. "You okay?" Mia shrugged, dropping her backpack by the stairs. "Not really. Have you eaten? I can make something." "I had dinner at Zoe's," she replied, then hesitated. "Is Mom here?" "No. She's staying at Grandma Patty's." Mia nodded, relief evident in her posture. "Good. I don't think I can face her yet." They moved to the living room, settling into an uncomfortable silence. Finally, Mia spoke. "Did you know? Before yesterday, I suspected something was wrong," Adrian admitted. "But I only confirmed it this weekend. The affair, the money, all of it. How could she do this to us?" Mia's voice cracked. "To you? You've given her everything." Adrian's heart ached at his daughter's pain. "I don't have answers, Mia. Sometimes people make choices that hurt the ones they love most. It doesn't mean they don't love them. It means they love something else more." "What, like Mr. Reynolds?" Mia scoffed. "He's such a phony, always talking about his vacation homes and his private jet." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "You've met him before yesterday?" Mia looked away. "A few times. Mom introduced us a couple months ago. Said he was a business associate interested in mentoring young people interested in real estate. He offered me an internship for the summer." The calculation behind it all made Adrian's blood boil. Reynolds hadn't just been seducing his wife and stealing his company. He'd been positioning himself to replace Adrian in his daughter's life as well. "What are you going to do?" Mia asked, interrupting his thoughts. Adrian considered his answer carefully. "I'm going to protect what's ours. The company, this home, your future. Beyond that, I don't know yet. Are you going to forgive her?" The question was quiet, vulnerable. "No," Adrian said without hesitation. "Some betrayals can't be forgiven, Mia." She nodded slowly. "I think I'm going to bed. It's been a long day." "Of course. We can talk more tomorrow if you want." Mia paused at the bottom of the stairs, looking back at her father. "Dad, promise me something. Anything. Don't let them win. Mom and Mr. Reynolds. Don't let them take what's yours." Adrian's expression hardened. "I promise." After Mia went upstairs, Adrian returned to the deck, his mind racing. The encounter had crystallized something for him. This wasn't just about Vanessa's betrayal anymore. It was about Theo Reynolds' calculated attempt to dismantle his entire life, his marriage, his company, and now his relationship with his daughter. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "It's late, Adrian," Liam answered, concern in his voice. "Everything okay?" "I need information on Theo Reynolds," Adrian said without preamble. "Everything you can find. Business dealings, personal life, skeletons in closets. Especially anything related to Westlake Strategies." "Adrian," Liam's voice lowered. "What are you planning?" "Just gathering information," Adrian replied smoothly. "For the divorce proceedings." A pause. "This isn't like you." "The old me died when I found out my wife and her lover were systematically destroying everything I've built," Adrian said coldly. "You're either with me on this, Liam, or I'll find someone who is." Another pause, longer this time. "I have a contact. Former FBI, works private security now. She's discreet and thorough. But Adrian, whatever you're thinking, remember that revenge rarely brings the satisfaction people hope for." "I'm not looking for satisfaction," Adrian replied. "I'm looking for justice. Send me her contact information." Later that night, in his home office, Adrian created a new email account under a pseudonym and reached out to Liam's contact, a woman named Valerie Marsh. Her response came within the hour, professional and to the point. Her rates were steep, but money was the least of Adrian's concerns now. "Mr. Mercer," she wrote, "I understand your situation requires discretion. I can begin immediately. For a case like this, I recommend a comprehensive approach, financial records, personal history, professional connections, and surveillance if necessary. Is there anything specific you're looking for?" Adrian typed his reply carefully. "Everything. Especially anything he wouldn't want made public. And his relationship with my wife, when it started, how deep it goes, and whether she's just another in a line of conquests. I want to know who Theo Reynolds really is beneath the expensive suits and smooth talk." As he sent the email, Adrian felt a strange calm settle over him. The initial shock and pain of betrayal had burned away, leaving behind something colder, harder, more focused. He opened his desk drawer and removed a leather-bound notebook, the kind he used for sketching house designs. On the first blank page, he wrote a single word: revenge. Then, meticulously, he began to list what he knew about Theo Reynolds, what he suspected, and what he needed to find out. Beside it, he started another list for Vanessa: weaknesses, vulnerabilities, pressure points. The blueprint for destruction. By morning, Adrian had slept only a few hours, but his mind was clearer than it had been in days. While Vanessa had been dismantling his present, he would systematically destroy their future. Not with the blind rage of a wounded husband, but with the calculated precision of a master builder who understood that to bring down a structure, you first had to identify its critical supports, and then, one by one, remove them. Chapter 5: The Mask. The mediation session with Vanessa and her lawyer was exactly what Adrian had expected: tense, accusatory, and ultimately unproductive. Vanessa, looking polished despite the circumstances, had the audacity to demand half the company and the lake house. Given Mrs. Mercer's significant contributions to the business over the years, her lawyer, Barbara Wilkins, argued, "We believe an equal division of assets is not only fair but required by law." Contributions? Adrian scoffed. Like embezzling company funds to finance an affair with a competitor? Those are unsubstantiated allegations, Barbara countered smoothly. My client categorically denies any financial impropriety. Liam slid a folder across the table. Bank transfers to Westlake Strategies, incorporated by Theodore Reynolds, who, coincidentally, is offering to buy the company at a suspiciously low price. We have more if you'd like to see it. Barbara glanced at the documents, her professional demeanor faltering slightly. We'll need time to review these claims. Take all the time you need, Adrian replied coldly. But understand this: your client committed fraud. The only reason she's not facing criminal charges is my desire to protect our daughter from further trauma. Vanessa, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. Adrian, please. We can work this out without destroying everything. That's rich, coming from you, Adrian said, meeting her eyes for the first time. Tell me, when did it start? The affair with Reynolds. Was it before or after you started funneling my money to him? Our money, Vanessa corrected automatically. Answer the question. Vanessa glanced at her lawyer, who gave a slight nod. We reconnected at the Chamber of Commerce dinner last year. Things were difficult between us. He understood me in ways you stopped trying to years ago. Reconnected? Adrian caught the word immediately. You knew him before? A flicker of something, guilt? Fear, crossed Vanessa's face. Briefly. In college. It wasn't serious then. Another piece of the puzzle. Adrian filed it away for later investigation. And the money? Was that his idea or yours? Adrian, Liam warned quietly. No, I want to know, Adrian pressed. $200,000 of company funds. Our client's money. Was that the price of your affection, or did he have to throw in the promise of a new life once I was out of the picture? That's enough, Barbara interrupted firmly. We're not here to litigate past grievances. We're here to discuss an equitable division of assets moving forward. Here's what's going to happen, Adrian said, ignoring the lawyer completely. Vanessa signs over her shares in the company. She walks away with a one-time settlement of $500,000. No alimony. No claim on the house. In exchange, I don't press charges for embezzlement. That's absurd, Barbara sputtered. Mrs. Mercer is entitled to half of what we built together, Adrian finished for her. But she wasn't building. She was systematically dismantling. Ask your client about that before you push for more. He stood, gathering his papers. You have 24 hours to accept the offer. After that, I go to the police with everything I have. You wouldn't, Vanessa said, her facade finally cracking. Think about Mia. I'm thinking about Mia, Adrian replied. I'm thinking about the example I want to set for her. That actions have consequences. That betrayal has a price. He turned to leave, then paused. By the way, she's decided to stay with me. Seems she's not interested in living with her mother and her mother's boyfriend. The meeting left Adrian feeling hollow rather than victorious. But as he drove back to the office, his phone buzzed with an email from Valerie Marsh. Preliminary findings attached. Call when you can review. The report was more revealing than Adrian had dared hope. Theo Reynolds, it seemed, had a pattern. 3 previous failed marriages, all to women involved in businesses he later acquired. Financial irregularities in at least 2 of those companies before they were sold. A pending lawsuit from a former business partner alleging fraud settled out of court with a non-disclosure agreement. Most interesting was a note about Reynolds' gambling habit. High-stakes poker games at a private club outside of town. Losses in the 6 figures over the past year, according to Valerie's source. A potential vulnerability. Adrian called her immediately. Ms. Marsh? Adrian Mercer. I've reviewed your report. Mr. Mercer. Valerie's voice was cool, professional. I'm glad you found it informative. It's just the beginning, of course. It's very thorough. The gambling debts, are they verifiable? Yes. My source works security at the Monarch Club. Reynolds is a regular, usually on Thursday nights. Lately, he's been losing more than he wins. In these previous marriages, the pattern is clear, but is there proof of financial manipulation? Nothing that would stand up in court, Valerie admitted. But I'm still digging. His second wife might be willing to talk. She didn't sign an NDA as part of their divorce. Adrian considered this information. I want to meet her, and I want surveillance on Reynolds, particularly his meetings with my wife. Already underway, Valerie assured him. I'll set up the meeting with Catherine Reynolds. She kept his name, interestingly enough. Anything else? Yes, Adrian said after a moment. Find out everything you can about Vanessa's college years. She knew Reynolds back then. I want to know how well. That evening, Adrian maintained his facade of normalcy for Mia's sake. They cooked dinner together, pasta with his grandmother's sauce recipe, and talked about safe topics. Her physics project, the vintage car show coming to town, the new Netflix series they'd been watching together. It was almost like before. Almost. Dad, Mia asked as they cleared the dishes. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you okay? Really okay, I mean. Not just saying you are. Adrian paused, considering his answer carefully. I'm functioning. Some moments are harder than others. Mia nodded, loading the dishwasher. I talked to Mom today. Adrian tensed. Oh, she called, said she wants to see me. Explain her side. Mia's voice was carefully neutral. I told her I need more time. That's fair, Adrian said, relief washing over him. You take all the time you need. The thing is, Mia continued, not meeting his eyes, she said some stuff about you. That you're not being reasonable. That you're trying to ruin her life because you're hurt. Adrian set down the plate he was rinsing, turning to face his daughter fully. What do you think? Mia shrugged, still not looking up. I think she's the one who ruined things. But I'm worried about you. You seem different. Colder. Like you're planning something. Perceptive, just like her mother. The irony wasn't lost on Adrian. I'm protecting what's ours, Mia. That's all. Promise me you won't do anything stupid, she said, finally meeting his gaze. I can't lose both parents. Adrian pulled her into a hug, his heart aching. You won't lose me. I promise. Later that night, as Mia slept, Adrian returned to his workshop. The jewelry box he'd been making for Vanessa was nearly complete. He ran his fingers over the smooth wood, tracing the inlay pattern he'd designed based on the wildflowers from the meadow where he'd proposed. In a sudden surge of rage, he grabbed the box and hurled it against the wall, where it shattered into pieces. The destruction brought no relief, no catharsis. Just a hollow echo of his own broken promises. His phone buzzed with another email from Valerie. This one contained pictures, Vanessa and Theo at a restaurant, their body language intimate, comfortable. In one, Theo's hand rested possessively on her lower back as they entered what appeared to be a hotel. Adrian stared at the images, waiting for the pain to hit. But there was nothing, just a cold, calculating analysis. They were getting sloppy, confident. That could be useful. Another email followed minutes later. This one contained a single document, a newspaper clipping from 23 years ago when Vanessa was in college. A campus newspaper article about a business competition, featuring a photo of the winning team. Vanessa stood in the center, grinning triumphantly. Beside her, his arm around her waist, stood a younger Theo Reynolds. The caption read, Business school sweethearts Vanessa Lawson and Theodore Reynolds take first place with their innovative real estate investment model. Professor Harold Weiss calls their partnership a force to be reckoned with. It wasn't a reconnection last year. It was a reunion, a continuation of something that had apparently never fully ended. Adrian looked around his shattered workshop, the broken jewelry box, the tools and materials, the half-finished projects. All of it built on a foundation of lies. 20 years of marriage, a daughter, a company, all of it compromised from the beginning. Something inside Adrian Mercer broke that night. The last vestige of the man who believed in second chances, who valued honesty and integrity above all else. In his place emerged someone new, someone capable of the kind of calculated vengeance that would leave no survivors. He swept up the broken pieces of the jewelry box and threw them away. Then, with steady hands, he began a new project, one that would serve as both cover and metaphor for what was to come. A game of chess, carved in contrasting woods. Dark walnut for one side, pale maple for the other. Each piece a perfect representation of its power and purpose. Starting with the king. Starting with himself. Chapter 6, The Architect. Over the next 2 weeks, Adrian Mercer lived a double life. By day, he was the stoic business owner dealing with the aftermath of his wife's betrayal, meeting with lawyers, reassuring clients, maintaining a brave face for his employees and his daughter. By night, he became the architect of destruction, meticulously planning the downfall of Theo Reynolds and Vanessa. His workshop transformed into a war room, the chess set growing piece by piece alongside his plans. Vanessa had accepted his divorce terms, her lawyer's resistance crumbling when Liam had presented additional evidence of financial impropriety. The settlement was being drafted, the company's shares transferred. Adrian should have felt victorious. Instead, he felt nothing but cold determination to see his larger plan through. Valerie Marsh had proven invaluable, uncovering layers of Reynolds' corrupt business practices, shell companies similar to Westlake Strategies, partners left financially ruined, former employees silenced with NDAs and threats. The man was careful, but not careful enough. Most crucially, she'd arranged a meeting with Catherine Reynolds, Theo's second ex-wife, who now lived in a modest apartment in the neighboring town. "He'll destroy her, you know," Catherine said, sipping tea in her small living room. She was in her 40s, still beautiful, but with a weariness in her eyes that spoke of hard lessons learned. "Your wife. Once he gets what he wants, which is my company," Adrian supplied. Catherine smiled sadly. "Not just that. It's about winning, taking what belongs to someone else. Theo doesn't value things. He values acquisition. You were married 4 years. 3 years, 8 months. I own a small chain of boutiques when we met. By the time he left, they were all closed, and somehow he owned the real estate they had occupied." Her laugh was brittle. "I never saw it coming. Not until it was too late. And there were others? Before my wife?" Catherine nodded. "At least 2 that I know of. One during our marriage, a client's wife. The other after me, before your wife. Patricia something. She had a landscaping business he wanted for a development project." Adrian froze. "Patricia? Last name Powell." "Yes, that's it. Powell Landscapes." "Why? Do you know her?" Adrian's mind raced. Patricia Powell. Vanessa's mother. The pieces were aligning with sickening clarity. "She's my mother-in-law." Catherine's eyes widened. "Oh my God, that can't be coincidence." "No," Adrian agreed grimly. "It's not. What are you going to do?" Catherine asked, studying his face. Adrian met her gaze steadily. "What would you do if you could go back? Knowing what you know now." She didn't hesitate. "Burn it all down. Him, his reputation, his business. Everything. That's exactly what I intend to do," Adrian said softly. "And I think you can help me." That night, Adrian added more pieces to his chess set and more elements to his plan. The meeting with Catherine had confirmed what he'd suspected. Reynolds' pattern of seduction and destruction wasn't opportunistic. It was methodical. The connection to Patricia Powell was the missing piece. Reynolds hadn't reconnected with Vanessa by chance. He'd calculated it, using his relationship with her mother to gain access. And Patricia had allowed it, perhaps encouraged it, despite knowing his history. Adrian's phone buzzed with a text from Mia. "Can we talk when I get home?" "Important." "Of course," he replied. "Everything okay? Just need to talk. See you at 6. When Mia arrived, she seemed nervous, fidgeting with her backpack straps as she followed Adrian to the kitchen. "What's up?" he asked, keeping his tone light as he prepared dinner. "I saw Mom today," Mia admitted. "She was waiting outside school." Adrian set down the knife he was using to chop vegetables, careful to keep his expression neutral. "I see. How'd that go?" "Weird," Mia said, slumping onto a bar stool. "She was crying a lot. Said she made a terrible mistake and wants to come home." Something cold settled in Adrian's stomach. "What did you tell her?" "That it's not up to me," Mia replied. "But Dad," she seemed really sorry. "Said Mr. Reynolds manipulated her, made her think you were going to lose the company if she didn't help him." "And you believe her?" Adrian asked quietly. Mia shrugged, not meeting his eyes. "I don't know. She's still my mom. And she said something else. About Grandma Patty." "What about her?" "That she dated Mr. Reynolds a few years ago. That it ended badly. Mom said he's been planning this for years, getting close to our family." Mia looked up, her eyes troubled. "Is that true?" Adrian resumed chopping, buying time to organize his thoughts. "Catherine Reynolds, Theo's ex-wife, confirmed it today. Your grandmother had a landscaping business that Reynolds wanted. Apparently, dating the owner was his method of acquisition." "That's messed up," Mia muttered. "So what Mom's saying could be true? That he manipulated her too?" Adrian set down the knife again and turned to face his daughter fully. "Mia, your mother is an intelligent, capable woman. She's the CFO of a successful company. She made deliberate choices to have an affair, to divert company funds, to lie to me for months. Those weren't mistakes. They were calculated decisions. But if Mr. Reynolds was manipulating her, then she allowed herself to be manipulated," Adrian interrupted gently. "Adults are responsible for their choices, even when those choices are influenced by others." Mia's shoulders slumped. "So you won't forgive her? Even if she's really sorry?" Adrian studied his daughter's face, so full of hope for reconciliation, for a return to the family they'd been. "Some betrayals cut too deep, Mia. It's not just about forgiveness. It's about trust. I could never trust her again." "I get it," Mia said, though her expression said otherwise. I miss how things were." "Me too," Adrian admitted, pulling her into a hug. "But we'll build something new, you and me. I promise." After dinner, as Mia worked on homework, Adrian retreated to his workshop. The chess set was nearly complete now, each piece a testament to his skill and patience. All except the opposing king, Theo Reynolds. That one he saved for last. His phone rang. Valerie Marsh. "Mr. Mercer, I have something you should see immediately. Can you meet?" 20 minutes later, Adrian sat in Valerie's car outside a dive bar on the edge of town, reviewing the documents she compiled. "Reynolds is in serious financial trouble," she explained. "The gambling debts are worse than we thought, close to $500,000. He's leveraged his company to cover them, but his creditors are getting impatient. So the offer for my company is a desperate play," Valerie confirmed. "He needs the acquisition to stabilize his finances. Without it, Reynolds' development group could collapse within months." Adrian processed this information. "And Vanessa? What does she know about this?" "Based on their communications, everything. She's been helping him manage the cash flow issues, hence the embezzlement from your company." Valerie handed him another folder. "There's more. About your mother-in-law." Adrian opened it to find a series of emails between Patricia Powell and Theo Reynolds, dating back 3 years. Their relationship had indeed ended badly, with Reynolds acquiring her business at a fraction of its value after she'd taken on debt to expand, debt he'd encouraged. But the most damning emails were more recent, discussing Vanessa and Adrian. "Theo, she's still uncertain. Adrian suspects nothing, but Vanessa has these inconvenient attacks of conscience. Remind her what's at stake. Patty, and later, the lakefront property alone is worth millions. Once the divorce is final and Vanessa has her share, we can move forward with the development plans. Adrian will never know what hit him." Theo. The betrayal ran deeper than Adrian had imagined. It wasn't just his wife and her lover. It was a conspiracy involving his mother-in-law, targeting not just his company, but the lakefront property he'd lovingly built into their dream home. The property, Adrian suddenly understood. Reynolds doesn't just want my company. He wants the lake house too. For development. Valerie nodded. Based on these plans I found, he intends to build a luxury condo complex. Your home would be demolished to make way for the access road. The final piece clicked into place. The lake house sat on 5 acres of prime waterfront property, surrounded by protected wetlands. Adrian had purchased it years ago, working with conservation authorities to ensure the house was built with minimal environmental impact. It was the only developable parcel for miles, a jewel Reynolds couldn't acquire through normal means. They've been planning this for years, Adrian said, more to himself than to Valerie, using Vanessa to get to the company and the property. It appears so, Valerie agreed. What do you want to do with this information? Adrian considered the question carefully. His initial impulse, to go to the police to expose them all, wouldn't satisfy the growing need for a more personal reckoning. Keep digging, he said finally, especially into Patricia Powell's involvement. And I need something else. Access to the Monarch Club this Thursday night. The poker game? Valerie raised an eyebrow. That won't be easy. It's very exclusive. Make it happen, Adrian insisted. It's time I met Theo Reynolds properly. Not as the husband he'd betrayed, but as the man who's going to destroy him. As Adrian drove home, a plan crystallized in his mind. Reynolds was desperate for cash. His gambling problem made him vulnerable, and Adrian now controlled the very things Reynolds needed most, the company and the property. Back in his workshop, Adrian finally carved the opposing king for his chess set. Theo Reynolds, rendered in dark walnut with exquisite, damning detail. He placed it on the board, surrounded by its remaining pieces, Vanessa the queen, Patricia the bishop. Then, one by one, he positioned his own pieces in a classic checkmate configuration. The trap was set. All that remained was to spring it. The next morning, Adrian called Liam with specific instructions for the divorce settlement. I want a clause about the lake house. Vanessa gets right of first refusal if I ever sell. Why would you add that? Liam asked, confused. You've been adamant about keeping the property. Just do it, Adrian insisted, and make sure it's prominently featured in the agreement. I want her to notice it. Adrian, Liam's voice lower, concerned. What are you planning? Justice, Adrian replied simply. Long overdue. The board was set. The players positioned. After weeks of pain and planning, Adrian Mercer was ready to begin the endgame. Chapter 7. First Blood. The Monarch Club occupied the top floor of a nondescript office building downtown, its existence known only to the wealthy and well-connected. Adrian arrived at 11, dressed in a tailored suit that projected the confidence of a man accustomed to high-stakes environments. Valerie had arranged his entry through a client who owed her a favor, a wealthy real estate investor who vouched for Adrian as a serious player looking for serious action. The 5-figure buy-in had barely registered as Adrian transferred the funds. Money was simply a tool now, a means to an end. The elevator opened directly into a windowless reception area where a suited attendant checked Adrian's name against a list. Beyond lay a space that exuded old-world luxury. Dark wood paneling, leather furnishings, subdued lighting that flattered the aging faces of the men and few women who comprised the city's elite. Adrian scanned the room, instantly identifying Theo Reynolds at the main poker table. He was holding court, drink in hand, surrounded by admirers and sycophants. Adrian took a position at the bar, ordering a whiskey he had no intention of drinking. His focus needed to remain razor-sharp. It didn't take long for Reynolds to notice the newcomer. Adrian could feel the man's gaze, curious at first, then hardening with recognition. After a brief word to his companions, Reynolds approached the bar. Adrian Mercer, he said, his voice carefully neutral. This is unexpected. Theo, Adrian nodded, raising his glass slightly. I didn't realize you were a member here. 7 years now, Reynolds replied, signaling the bartender for a refill. First visit, Adrian admitted. I find myself with extra time on my hands these days. Divorce proceedings are surprisingly efficient when one party has nothing to negotiate. Reynolds had the grace to look uncomfortable. About that. Business is business, Adrian. Nothing personal. Sleeping with my wife while plotting to steal my company and home. Adrian's smile was cold. That feels rather personal. The bartender set down Reynolds' drink, and the man took a long sip before responding. Vanessa and I have history. Before you. Sometimes old flames reignite. So I've learned, Adrian said, swirling his whiskey. College sweethearts, reunited after all these years. Almost romantic, if it weren't so calculated. Something flickered in Reynolds' eyes, surprise, perhaps, that Adrian knew about their past. Ancient history. Like your relationship with Patricia Powell? Adrian watched carefully as Reynolds stiffened. My mother-in-law has interesting taste in men. You've been busy, Reynolds observed, his casual tone at odds with his tense posture. I've had time to connect some dots, Adrian agreed. 3 women, 3 businesses, 1 Theo Reynolds walking away with everything. It's quite a pattern. Reynolds set down his glass. If you came here to threaten me. Threat? No, Adrian interrupted smoothly. I came to play poker. I hear you're quite the enthusiast. Reynolds studied him, trying to discern Adrian's true purpose. The buy-in is steep. I can afford it, Adrian replied. Unless you'd rather not play with me? Actually, Reynolds' smile returned. Predatory now. I'd love to take your money. Consider it a down payment on what you'll lose in the divorce. We'll see who loses what, Adrian said, finishing his drink. Shall we? The poker game lasted well into the early morning hours. Players came and went, but Adrian and Reynolds remained, locked in a private battle beneath the veneer of casual gambling. Adrian played conservatively at first, folding more hands than he played, observing Reynolds' style, aggressive, risk-taking, prone to bluffing when under pressure. By 3 a.m., only 5 players remained, and Adrian had methodically built a substantial stack of chips. Reynolds had been drinking steadily, his earlier confidence eroding with each losing hand. His tells became more obvious, a slight twitch at the corner of his mouth when bluffing, an overly casual posture when holding a strong hand. Raise 20,000, Reynolds announced, pushing forward a stack of chips. The other players folded quickly, leaving only Adrian in the hand. He studied his cards, a pair of kings, decent but not exceptional, then looked at Reynolds, seeing the telltale twitch. Call, Adrian said calmly, matching the bet, and raise another 50,000. A murmur ran through the onlookers. Reynolds' face flushed with anger or alcohol, perhaps both. You're bluffing, Mercer. Am I? Adrian's expression revealed nothing. Only one way to find out. Reynolds glanced at his remaining chips, considerably fewer than Adrian's raise. I don't have that much left. Collateral, then, suggested one of the other players. We're all good for it here. Reynolds hesitated, then nodded grimly. Fine. I call. He scribbled something on a slip of paper and tossed it into the pot. My interest in the Hamilton Street development. Worth twice your bet. Adrian nodded, accepting the marker. Show your cards, then. Reynolds turned over his hand triumphantly. Pair of aces. High card queen. For a moment, Adrian simply looked at the cards. Then, slowly, he revealed his own hand. Kings. With an ace kicker. The table fell silent. Reynolds stared in disbelief. That's impossible. Improbable, Adrian corrected, gathering the chips and the marker. Not impossible. Much like the odds of you successfully taking my company. He stood, nodding to the other players. Gentlemen, it's been enlightening. Mr. Reynolds, I'll have my lawyer contact you about claiming my interest in the Hamilton Street project. Reynolds' face darkened with rage. This isn't over, Mercer. On the contrary, Adrian replied softly, so only Reynolds could hear. It's just beginning. Outside, the night air was cool on Adrian's face as he walked to his car. The first phase of his plan had worked perfectly. Reynolds was now financially compromised, having lost not only cash but a valuable development interest to the very man he was trying to destroy. But more importantly, Adrian had established himself as a legitimate threat. Not the cuckolded husband to be pitied, but a calculating adversary to be feared. Reynolds would be off balance now, anxious, prone to mistakes. exactly where Adrian wanted him. The next morning, Adrian instructed Liam to formalize his claim on the Hamilton Street development interest. "How did you even acquire this?" Liam asked, bewildered. "This is a multi-million-dollar project." "Poker game," Adrian explained casually. Reynolds was feeling reckless. "Adrian," Liam's voice was cautious. "What game are you playing here? First the divorce clause about the lake house, now this. These aren't random moves." "No," Adrian agreed. "They're not." That afternoon, Adrian received a text from Vanessa. "We need to talk." "It's important." He replied simply, "My office, 3 p.m. When Vanessa arrived, Adrian was reviewing blueprints for the Hamilton Street development, a luxury mixed-use project that represented a significant portion of Reynolds Development Group's projected income for the next year. "You look well," Vanessa observed, taking the seat across from him. She was dressed formally in a blue suit that Adrian had once complimented her on, her hair freshly styled. A deliberate choice, no doubt. "What do you want, Vanessa?" Adrian asked, not looking up from the blueprints. "I heard about last night," she said. "The poker game. Theo is upset." "I imagine he is," Adrian replied, finally meeting her gaze. "Losing tends to have that effect." "What are you doing, Adrian?" "This vendetta against Theo." "Against both of you," Adrian corrected. "Let's not pretend you're an innocent bystander." Vanessa sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I made mistakes. Terrible ones. But this path you're on, it won't bring you peace." "I'm not looking for peace," Adrian said coldly. "I'm looking for justice." "Is that why you added that clause about the lake house?" Vanessa asked. "Some kind of trap?" "Not a trap," Adrian replied. "An opportunity for you to show your true priorities." Vanessa leaned forward, her voice softening. "Adrian, please. For Mia's sake, if nothing else. We can end this amicably." "Amicably," Adrian repeated incredulously. "You and your mother and your lover conspired to steal everything I built. There is no amicable ending to that story, Vanessa." "My mother." Vanessa paled slightly. "What does she have to do with this?" Adrian slid a folder across the desk. Copies of the emails Valerie had uncovered. "Read it and tell me again how you were manipulated by Reynolds." Vanessa's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Adrian watched her expression shift from confusion to shock to dismay as she read the evidence of her mother's complicity. "I didn't know," she whispered, looking up with tears in her eyes. "About Mom, I swear. She introduced us, reintroduced us, but I never thought that she was setting you up to be his accomplice." Adrian finished. "Just like she was, the woman he used and discarded after he took her business." Vanessa shook her head in denial. "No, Mom wouldn't." But her voice trailed off as she reread the damning emails. "Your mother knew exactly who he was and what he does," Adrian said. "And she served you up to him anyway. Why are you showing me this?" Vanessa asked, her voice small. "Because I want you to understand exactly what you've become a part of," Adrian replied. "This isn't love, Vanessa. It's business. You're means to an end for him, just like your mother was. Just like his ex-wives were." "Ex-wives?" She looked up sharply. "3 of them," Adrian confirmed. "All former business owners whose assets mysteriously ended up in Reynolds' portfolio after painful divorces. Sound familiar?" Vanessa stood abruptly, gathering her purse. "I need to go." "One more thing," Adrian called as she reached the door. "The family barbecue at your mother's this weekend. I'll be there." Vanessa turned, her expression a mix of confusion and alarm. "What? Why?" "Mia asked me to come," Adrian replied, which was true enough. "She doesn't want to face everyone alone. As her father, how could I refuse?" "Adrian, please." Vanessa's voice held a note of panic now. "Not there. Not in front of everyone. Worry what I might say?" Adrian asked with a cold smile. "Don't be. I'm not the one with secrets to keep anymore." After Vanessa left, Adrian returned to the Hamilton Street blueprints, but his mind was elsewhere. The look on her face when she'd read those emails, the genuine shock and betrayal, had been unexpected. For a brief moment, he'd felt a flicker of the old connection, the urge to comfort rather than destroy. He crushed the feeling ruthlessly. Vanessa had made her choices. Whether she'd known the full extent of her mother's involvement was irrelevant now. The machine was in motion, the pieces moving toward an inevitable conclusion. That evening, as Adrian worked on the final details of his chess set in the workshop, Mia appeared in the doorway. "Dad, can I talk to you about something?" Adrian set down his tools. "Always." Mia entered, running her fingers over the finished chess pieces. "This is beautiful. When did you start it?" "About 3 weeks ago," Adrian answered. "It helps me think. Is that why all the pieces look like real people?" Mia picked up the opposing king, the Theo piece, studying its details. Adrian's hand stilled. "You noticed that? It's pretty obvious," Mia said, setting down the piece and picking up the queen. "This one looks like Mom." "It's just a project," Adrian said carefully, "to keep my hands busy during a difficult time." Mia fixed him with a penetrating gaze. "Mom called me today. She was upset. Said you're planning something for Grandma's barbecue." "Did she, Dad?" Mia's voice was serious now. "Whatever you're doing, this revenge thing with Mr. Reynolds, with Mom, you need to stop. It's changing you." Adrian studied his daughter's face, so young yet so perceptive. "Some changes can't be undone, Mia. Some betrayals cut too deep." "So what? You become just like them?" Mia challenged. "Scheming and plotting? That's not who you are." "Maybe it's who I need to be," Adrian replied softly. "To protect what's ours." "We don't need protection anymore," Mia insisted. "Mom signed the divorce papers. Mr. Reynolds can't touch your company. It's over." Adrian shook his head. "It's not that simple." "It could be," Mia said, her eyes pleading. "If you'd let it be." Adrian reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear as he'd done since she was small. "I promise you this. After the barbecue, everything will be resolved, one way or another." Mia didn't look convinced, but she nodded reluctantly. "Just remember who you really are, okay? You taught me that integrity matters more than winning." After she left, Adrian remained in the workshop, turning her words over in his mind. The man he'd been, the one who valued integrity above all, seemed a distant memory now. But Mia still believed in that man, still needed him to be better than those who had betrayed them. His phone buzzed with a text from Valerie. Reynolds making frantic calls to investors. Hamilton Street project was leveraged against gambling debts. "Your claim has triggered a liquidity crisis." He's scrambling. Perfect. The first domino had fallen. Reynolds was vulnerable, desperate, and desperate men made mistakes. Adrian picked up the king piece from his side of the chessboard, carved in his own likeness, and studied it thoughtfully. The path forward was clear, the trap nearly set. By this time next week, Theo Reynolds and everyone who had conspired with him would face the consequences of their betrayal. But Mia's words echoed in his mind. "Remember who you really are." Who was he now? The builder or the destroyer? The man of integrity or the architect of vengeance? Perhaps, Adrian thought as he placed the king back on the board, the barbecue would answer that question for both of them. Chapter 8. The Gathering. Patricia Powell's backyard was transformed for the annual family barbecue. String lights hung from trees, tables covered in checkered cloths, the scent of grilling meat wafting through the air. It was a tradition that dated back to Patricia's late husband's time, a gathering of family, friends, and neighbors that had continued despite his passing 5 years ago. Adrian arrived with Mia, conscious of the stares and whispered conversations that paused as they made their way through the crowd. News of his separation from Vanessa had spread through their social circle, though the details remained mercifully private. "Mr. Mercer," Patricia greeted him with a brittle smile. At 65, she remained a striking woman with the same auburn hair as her daughter, though hers came from a bottle these days. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Mia wanted me here," Adrian replied simply. He held her gaze, searching for any sign of guilt or discomfort. If she felt either, she hid it well. Of course, family is family, regardless of circumstances. Patricia turned to Mia with practiced warmth. "Darling, your cousins are by the pool. Why don't you go say hello while I catch up with your father?" Mia glanced between them uncertainly. "I think I'll stick with Dad for now." "Go ahead," Adrian encouraged gently. "I'll be fine. Your grandmother and I need to talk anyway." After Mia reluctantly departed, Patricia led Adrian to a quieter corner of the yard. "I assume this talk isn't a social call," she said, dropping the pretense of congeniality. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Adrian asked, keeping his voice low. "About you and Reynolds. About how you set him up with your daughter after he took your business." Patricia's composure slipped, just for a moment, before her mask of indifference returned. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The emails, Patricia, between you and Reynolds. Planning to use Vanessa to get to my company, my property." Adrian stepped closer. "What kind of mother sacrifices her own daughter for revenge?" "You don't understand," Patricia hissed. "He destroyed my business. Everything I built after Harold died. Left me with nothing but debt and broken promises. So you serve up Vanessa as what? Collateral? Bait?" Patricia's eyes hardened. "Vanessa was unhappy anyway. You were so consumed with your precious company, your perfect houses. She was lonely. Theo gave her attention, appreciation. He gave her a role in a con," Adrian corrected. "The same con he ran on you. And you knew exactly what he was doing." "It wasn't supposed to go this far," Patricia insisted, glancing nervously toward the gathering. "Theo promised no one would get hurt. Just business." Adrian laughed coldly. "And you believed him? After what he did to you? To his 3 ex-wives?" A flicker of surprise crossed Patricia's face. "3? I only knew about Catherine." "There's a pattern," Adrian said. "Women with businesses he wants. Seduction, manipulation, financial entanglement. Sound familiar?" Patricia's shoulders slumped slightly. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing," Adrian replied. "Yet. For now. We're going to rejoin your lovely barbecue and pretend everything is normal. But keep an eye on your daughter, Patricia. She's about to learn exactly what kind of man she's tied her future to." As they returned to the main gathering, Adrian spotted Vanessa across the lawn, engaged in conversation with her sister. Their eyes met briefly before she looked away, her discomfort evident even at a distance. "Dad," Mia called, waving him over to where she stood with her cousins. "Uncle Scott's asking about the Jensen project." Scott Powell, Vanessa's younger brother, greeted Adrian with a genuine handshake. Unlike his mother and sister, Scott had always been straightforward, a quality Adrian appreciated. "Good to see you, man. How's the West Side development coming along?" Adrian fell into easy conversation about work, grateful for the normalcy. Scott had been one of the first to reach out after news of the separation broke, offering support without judgment. "If you need anything," he'd said, "just ask. Family's still family, whatever Vanessa's done." As afternoon turned to evening, the gathering grew livelier. Patricia's neighbor, a retired firefighter named Lou, manned the grill with military precision. Children chased each other across the lawn, while adults clustered in conversational groups, drinks in hand. And then Theo Reynolds arrived. He entered through the side gate as if he belonged there, dressed casually but expensively in designer jeans and a polo shirt. A hush fell over the gathering as he made his way directly to Vanessa, kissing her cheek with possessive familiarity. Adrian felt Mia tense beside him. "What is he doing here?" "Making a statement," Adrian replied softly. "Staking his claim." "In front of everyone? In front of you? That's so disrespectful." Adrian placed a calming hand on his daughter's shoulder. "It's a power play. You want a reaction." He smiled grimly. "And he's going to get one. Just not the one he expects." Across the yard, Vanessa appeared uncomfortable with Theo's public display, stepping slightly away from his embrace. Patricia, however, welcomed him warmly, introducing him to guests as a family friend with no acknowledgement of the awkwardness his presence created. Adrian watched the dynamics unfold with detached interest, noting how Reynolds worked the crowd. Charming, confident, and utterly calculating. The man was a skilled operator, no question, but tonight he was performing on Adrian's stage, not his own. As dinner was served, Patricia orchestrated the seating to keep Adrian and Theo at opposite ends of the long table arrangement. Mia insisted on sitting with her father, a silent show of solidarity that touched him deeply. Vanessa, seated beside Theo, barely touched her food, her eyes darting occasionally toward Adrian and their daughter. The conversation ebbed and flowed around topics carefully selected to avoid controversy: community events, upcoming vacations, benign gossip about absent neighbors. But tension simmered beneath the surface pleasantries, a collective holding of breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. It came as dessert was being served. Patricia, perhaps emboldened by wine or simply unable to resist the opportunity to assert control over the narrative, raised her glass in an impromptu toast. To family, she began, her voice carrying across the tables. In all its complicated, wonderful forms, including those who are finding new paths forward. She nodded meaningfully toward Vanessa and Theo. A murmur of awkward acknowledgement rippled through the gathering. Adrian remained expressionless, taking a measured sip of his drink as Patricia continued. And speaking of paths forward, she added, her gaze shifting to Adrian. We wish Adrian well as he adjusts to his new circumstances. Sometimes change, while painful, is for the best. The condescension in her tone was unmistakable. Before Adrian could respond, Patricia delivered her final barb. My ex-son-in-law has many qualities, but perhaps parenthood and partnership weren't among his strengths. An uncomfortable silence fell. Adrian felt Mia's hand close around his in silent support. He squeezed it gently, then stood, his movement drawing all eyes. Thank you, Patricia, for that enlightening perspective, he said, his voice calm but carrying clearly. Since we're sharing observations about family, perhaps I might offer one of my own. Vanessa straightened in alarm. Adrian, please. He ignored her, raising his own glass. To honesty, something I've always valued, though apparently not everyone at this table shares that priority. Patricia's smile froze. Adrian, this isn't the time. On the contrary, he interrupted smoothly. What better time to clear the air? Among family. He looked directly at Theo Reynolds. And those who prey upon family. Reynolds set down his fork with deliberate care. Careful, Mercer. Your guest here. An unwelcome one, clearly, Adrian agreed. But then, the truth is rarely welcome at gatherings built on lies. The other guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing the imminent collision of private grievances in public space. Some began to murmur excuses, preparing to leave before witnessing something they'd rather not. Dad, Mia whispered urgently. Maybe not here. Adrian patted her hand reassuringly. It's all right, Mia. Sometimes things need to be said out loud. He addressed the table again. For those that don't know, my wife has been having an affair with Mr. Reynolds here, while simultaneously helping him siphon funds from our company to finance his gambling debts. Gasps and whispers erupted around the table. Vanessa's face drained of color. Adrian, stop. But that's old news, Adrian continued as if she hadn't spoken. What many of you don't know, what Vanessa herself didn't know until recently, is that this isn't a love story. It's a con, one that her own mother helped orchestrate. All eyes swung to Patricia, who stood abruptly. That's enough. You're drunk, Adrian. It's time for you to leave. I'm perfectly sober, Adrian countered, and I have the emails to prove it. Shall I read them aloud? The ones where you and Reynolds discuss using Vanessa to get to my company? To the lakefront property you both coveted for development. Patricia's nephew, a lawyer named David, intervened. I think we should take this conversation somewhere private. Why? Adrian asked mildly. When the plotting was done in secret, shouldn't the truth be public? Then it happened, the moment Adrian had been waiting for. Patricia, her composure finally cracking, lashed out. He's a terrible father, just like he was a terrible husband, she declared to the stunned gathering. Everyone knows it. A nervous titter of laughter rippled through some of the guests. Those eager to relieve tension, those aligned with Patricia's faction, those simply uncomfortable with the whole situation. And then Mia stood up on her chair, her young face flushed with anger. Grandma, I have something Mom doesn't want you to know. The words landed like a thunderclap. Vanessa, who had been watching the exchange with mounting horror, suddenly went pale as ash. Mia, no. Please. But Mia was beyond stopping. Last year, when Mom said she was working late all those nights, she was with Mr. Reynolds. I saw them together at the Lakeside Hotel when I was supposed to be at debate practice. She made me promise not to tell Dad. A collective gasp swept through the gathering. Vanessa swayed in her seat, then crumpled, sliding from her chair in a dead faint. The ensuing chaos was immediate. People rushing to Vanessa's side, others backing away from the unfolding drama, Patricia calling for water and space. Through it all, Adrian remained still, watching as his plan came to fruition in ways he couldn't have orchestrated better himself. But it was the look on Theo Reynolds' face that truly told the tale. Not concern for Vanessa, but calculation, recalibration. Already, Adrian could see the man was measuring his losses, determining his exit strategy. Vanessa had become a liability rather than an asset. "Come on, Dad," Mia said quietly, tugging at his arm. "Let's go." As they walked away from the commotion, Adrian felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and hollowness. The exposure had been effective, devastating even. But somehow, it felt less triumphant than he'd anticipated. "You knew, didn't you?" he asked Mia as they reached his car. "About your mother and Reynolds." All this time, Mia leaned against the passenger door, suddenly looking much older than her 16 years. "Since last September, I wanted to tell you, but Mom said it would destroy you, destroy our family." "It did anyway," Adrian observed softly. "Are you mad at me?" Mia's voice was small, vulnerable. Adrian pulled her into a hug. "No, sweetheart. Never. You were put in an impossible position by the adults who should have protected you. I'm sorry you had to carry that burden." As they drove home in silence, Adrian reflected on the evening's revelations. The public humiliation of Vanessa and Patricia had been satisfying, yes. But the knowledge that Mia had been silently shouldering this secret for nearly a year, that was something he hadn't anticipated. Another cost of Vanessa's betrayal, another injury inflicted not just on him, but on their daughter. Reynolds, however, remained mostly unscathed by the evening's drama. Embarrassed, perhaps, but his public reputation was still intact. His financial troubles remained private knowledge. The final phase of Adrian's plan, the complete destruction of the man who had orchestrated this entire scheme, was yet to come. And now, more than ever, Adrian was determined to see it through. Not just for himself, but for Mia, and for every other victim Reynolds had left in his wake. The real reckoning would come tomorrow at the Monarch Club, where Reynolds would discover just how thoroughly Adrian Mercer had dismantled his carefully constructed world. Chapter 9. Scorched Earth. The morning after the barbecue, Adrian sat in his home office, watching financial markets open on his computer screen while he waited for the inevitable. When his phone finally rang, Liam's name flashing on the display, he felt only calm certainty. "It's happening," Liam said without preamble. "Reynolds Development Group stock is in free fall, down 30% already and still dropping. The news about Hamilton Street hit the business wires an hour ago." "And the rest?" Adrian asked. "All proceeding as you arranged. The SEC has opened a formal investigation based on the evidence packet you provided. Reynolds creditors are calling in their markers after the rating downgrade. 3 major projects have been put on hold pending the outcome of the investigation." Adrian nodded to himself. "And Catherine Reynolds?" "Gave her statement to investigators this morning, as agreed, corroborating the pattern of fraudulent business practices. 2 other ex-wives have come forward as well, along with former business partners who were previously silenced by NDAs. They're saying the legal exposure could run into the tens of millions." "Good," Adrian said simply. "What about Vanessa?" Liam hesitated. "She's been trying to reach you. Multiple calls to the office. Says it's urgent." "I imagine it is," Adrian replied, unsurprised. "Has she been named in any of the investigations?" "Not yet, but it's only a matter of time unless I intervene," Adrian finished for him. "Which is exactly what she's hoping for." "Will you?" Liam asked carefully. "For Mia's sake, if nothing else." Adrian considered the question. "Let's see what she has to say first. Tell her I'll meet her at the lake house at noon." After hanging up, Adrian checked in on Mia, who was still sleeping after their late return from the barbecue. He left a note explaining his whereabouts, then gathered the documents he would need for his meeting with Vanessa. The lake house was quiet when he arrived, sunlight dancing across the water visible through the wall of windows. He'd built this home with his own hands, designing every element to capture the natural beauty of the setting. Now, The thought of Reynolds demolishing it to build condominiums filled him with cold rage. Vanessa arrived precisely at noon, looking haggard despite her carefully applied makeup. She hesitated at the threshold, as if uncertain of her welcome in the home that had once been hers. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, following him into the living room. "You said it was urgent," Adrian replied, taking a seat and gesturing for her to do the same. "I assume it's about Reynolds' current legal troubles." Vanessa's composure cracked slightly. "You did this. All of it. The Hamilton Street project, the SEC investigation, the creditors. It wasn't just revenge. It was a systematic destruction." "Yes," Adrian acknowledged without apology. "It was... why?" The question burst from her, raw and desperate. "You had what you wanted, the company, the divorce on your terms. Why go this far?" Adrian studied her. This woman he had once loved beyond reason. Because some betrayals can't be answered with half measures. Reynolds didn't just want my company or my wife. He wanted everything. My home, my daughter's respect, my entire life. He needed to understand there are consequences for such ambition. "And me?" Vanessa asked quietly. "What consequences did you plan for me?" "That depends," Adrian replied, "on what you have to say today." Vanessa took a deep breath. "The investigators contacted me this morning. They have evidence of my involvement in the financial improprieties. They're offering a deal if I testify against Theo, but even with cooperation, I'm looking at possible criminal charges. Unless someone with influence suggests I was manipulated, used, that I wasn't a willing participant in the scheme." Her eyes met his, pleading. "You have that influence now, Adrian. The investigators respect you as the whistleblower who exposed everything." Adrian leaned forward. "Were you manipulated, or were you a willing participant?" Vanessa looked away. "I don't know anymore. At first, seeing Theo again after all those years, it felt like fate. He was charming, attentive, everything you had stopped being." "I never stopped loving you," Adrian said softly. "I just trusted you. My mistake." "I know," she whispered. "I know that now. When I saw those emails from my mother, understood how deep the manipulation went." She shook her head. "But by then, I was already compromised. The money transfers, the fake consultancy. I convinced myself it was temporary, that no one would get hurt. People always get hurt, Vanessa. That's how con games work." She nodded miserably. "What happens now?" Adrian removed a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the coffee table between them. "Two options. Behind door number 1, I tell the investigators you were a knowing accomplice. You face charges alongside Reynolds and your mother. You likely serve time, lose your professional licenses, and most devastating of all, lose any meaningful relationship with Mia, who now knows the full extent of your deception." Vanessa flinched at the brutal assessment. "And door number 2? You sign these papers." Adrian pushed the folder toward her. "A full confession detailing Reynolds' methods, your mother's involvement, and your own actions. You agree to testify against both of them. In exchange, I'll use my influence to ensure you're treated as a cooperating witness rather than a co-conspirator." "Why would you do that?" Vanessa asked, suspicion mingling with desperate hope. "After everything?" "Not for you," Adrian clarified. "For Mia. She's lost enough in this mess. She shouldn't have to visit her mother in prison too." Vanessa opened the folder with trembling hands, scanning the detailed confession Adrian had prepared. It spared her nothing, laying out her infidelity and financial crimes in clinical detail, but also emphasized Reynolds' pattern of manipulation and Patricia's role in orchestrating the entire scheme. "My mother," Vanessa said, her voice breaking. She knew what he'd done to her, and she couldn't finish the sentence. "Some people's need for revenge overshadows everything else," Adrian observed quietly. "Even love for their own children." The irony of his statement wasn't lost on him. Wasn't that precisely the path he'd been on? The chess set in his workshop, each piece carved with calculating hatred, stood as testimony to how close he'd come to becoming what he despised. Vanessa signed the confession without further comment. Her signature, a shaky approximation of her usual confident scrawl. As she handed back the folder, their fingers brushed briefly, a ghost of the connection they had once shared. "I am sorry, Adrian," she said softly. "Not just for the betrayal, but for failing to see what was right in front of me all along. A good man, a good father, someone who built things instead of destroying them." Adrian accepted the folder without response. Her apology, sincere or not, changed nothing. The damage was done, the trust irreparably broken. "What will you do now?" Vanessa asked, rising to leave. "Rebuild," Adrian replied simply. "It's what I do." After she left, Adrian remained in the silent house, looking out over the lake that had drawn him to this property years ago. The water was calm today, reflecting the sky like a perfect mirror. He thought about Mia's word from days earlier, "Remember who you really are." His phone rang, interrupting his reflections. Catherine Reynolds' name appeared on the screen. "It's done," she said when he answered. "I've given my statement. The investigators say it's the final piece they needed for the arrest warrant." "Thank you," Adrian said sincerely, "for your courage." "It wasn't courage," Catherine corrected. "It was the opportunity to finally see justice done." "Will you be there when they take him in?" Adrian had arranged with Valerie to be notified when the arrest was imminent. "Yes, I need to see his face when he realizes it's over." "Understand," Catherine said softly. "Just don't let it consume you. After it's done, find your way back to building instead of destroying. You're too good at creation to waste your talent on revenge." Her words echoed his own thoughts so closely that Adrian felt a chill. "I'll try," he promised. That evening, as the sun set over the lake, Adrian received the call for Valerie. "It's happening. The Monarch Club. 30 minutes." The exclusive gambling venue seemed fitting for Reynolds' final downfall. The place where his addiction had created the financial vulnerability that Adrian had so efficiently exploited. Adrian arrived just as law enforcement was positioning plainclothes officers around the building's exits. "Mr. Mercer," the lead investigator greeted him. "We appreciate your cooperation in this matter. Your evidence was instrumental in building our case." "I'm just glad justice is being served," Adrian replied, his eyes on the building's entrance. "You should know," the investigator added, "we're also bringing in Patricia Powell tonight. The conspiracy charges are solid, based on the email evidence and your ex-wife's testimony." Adrian nodded, feeling no satisfaction at the thought of Mia's grandmother in handcuffs. Just another casualty in this war he hadn't started, but had finished with devastating efficiency. The arrest itself was anticlimactic. Reynolds emerged from the Monarch Club at 11:17 p.m., talking animatedly on his phone. He barely had time to register the approaching officers before they were upon him, reciting his rights as they secured his wrists with handcuffs. Adrian watched from across the street, a silent witness to the culmination of his carefully orchestrated revenge. Reynolds' eyes found him in the shadows, widening with understanding and then narrowing with impotent fury. "Mercer," he shouted across the distance, "this isn't over. You think you've won, but you've lost everything too." Adrian said nothing, simply holding the man's gaze until Reynolds was guided into the waiting police vehicle. Only then did he feel the weight lifting, not happiness or satisfaction, but the unburdening that comes with completed vengeance. As he drove home, Adrian realized Reynolds was partially right. He had lost much in this battle: his marriage, his illusions, perhaps even some essential part of himself. But unlike Reynolds, he still had his daughter, his company, and most importantly, his capacity to build rather than destroy. 3 months later, the Lake House sold for well above market value to a conservation trust that would preserve the property and surrounding wetlands in perpetuity. Adrian used half the proceeds to establish a scholarship fund for students pursuing sustainable architecture, creation rising from the ashes of destruction. Theo Reynolds pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud, racketeering, and financial crimes, receiving a 15-year sentence. Patricia Powell, facing her own charges, suffered a stroke before her trial and was remanded to a medical facility under guard. Vanessa, true to the agreement, testified against both and received probation rather than prison time. On a crisp fall afternoon, Adrian stood in his workshop, contemplating the chess set he'd created during those dark days of plotting. Each piece represented a player in the tragedy that had consumed his life for months. Himself, Vanessa, Reynolds, Patricia, all rendered in exquisite, damning detail. Dad, Mia appeared in the doorway. Are you ready? The foundation ceremony starts in an hour. Adrian looked up, smiling at his daughter. They'd weathered the storm together, emerging closer despite the pain. Mia now spent weekends with Vanessa, a tentative reconciliation that Adrian neither encouraged nor discouraged. Some relationships deserved second chances. Others did not. Almost, he replied, gathering the chess pieces one by one. Just finishing something first. After Mia left, Adrian placed the chess set in a custom box he'd built for it. Walnut with maple inlay, a final testament to his skill as a craftsman. Then he carried it to the stone fireplace in his new home, a modest but beautiful house he designed and built himself over the summer. Piece by piece, he fed the wooden figures into the flames. Vanessa, Patricia, even Theo Reynolds, watching as they blackened and crumbled to ash. Last was his own king, the piece he'd carved in his own likeness, imbued with all the cold calculation of the man he'd temporarily become. As it burned, Adrian felt the last vestiges of his revenge dissipate with the smoke. He would never forgive those who had betrayed him. Forgiveness required trust, and that was irreparably broken. But he could release the anger, the obsession with retribution. He was, after all, a builder, and there were better things to create than revenge. Dad, Mia called from outside. We should go. Coming, Adrian replied, watching as the final pieces of his vengeance turned to ash. Then he turned away from the fire and stepped into the crisp autumn air, toward his daughter, toward the future, toward whatever he would build next. The unforgiving man would always remain unforgiving, but he would no longer be defined by what he refused to forgive. Instead, he would be defined by what he chose to build from the ashes of betrayal. It was, he decided, enough. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.